So Flo, what's one piece of career advice you wish somebody had given you when you were starting out?
Thanks, Henry. Yeah, that's fascinating. I wish I had that little angel on my shoulder when I started my career that would have avoided a lot of mistakes, I guess. Reflecting on what was actually pivotal for me and thinking about anchoring that thought process into the way I'm seeing a career life cycle from learn, earn, and return. I think almost the most pivotal point of all of that is the beginning, like as if when you're building a house, like making sure that you have the right concrete slab and the right foundation in place, right? And the tendency I can see and observe is people rushing through that journey to actually get and maximize the earnings rapidly and not have necessarily parked and condensed all of these learning. So my piece of advice would be to actually take your time the first few years, 3-5 years of your career to basically pick the right business where you're going to learn. And learning is two things. Is of course the craft. So if you're a technologist like me, the craft will mean like all the foundations of the tech and moreover and more importantly, how to learn, right? Because we are in a space where learning is going to be something that is going to be with you all the way through, and learning how to learn is extremely important. Similarly, making sure that the business that you pick, you have the right set of personalities and leaders who will inspire you and that you could elevate as mentors. So that's really that moment in your career life cycle where you probably want to actually spend a bit more time rather than to rush out and try to basically move to the next job where we're going to get actually more money. And that's a mistake that I made. I really want to capitalize as quickly as possible on my market value. Therefore, I moved from being an employee to self-employed. And then, I was just chasing the next gig and so on and so forth. And that, to be honest, was at the expense of some of the foundational learnings that I had to get back later. So that probably would be my piece of advice for especially the more younger professionals listening to us.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your career that made a significant impact?
Yeah, Laura, it's somewhat very straightforward. For me, like what has been really pivotal in establishing my footprint as a professional was to actually reinvent myself. So 8 years ago, when I moved from France to Australia, I decided rather than capitalizing or leveraging all my experience as an entrepreneur in France or senior consultant, I decided to reset myself, as in to basically reestablish the foundations. And I started in the company as a developer. So I was business owner in France, and I started back as an engineer. And that has been actually extraordinarily useful for me. First, to allow me to bootstrap myself in Australia, understand really deeply the culture and how the fabric of the workspace works. And then to relearn the craft and to have fun as well, while learning when everything else in my life was shaking. That as it was, work was actually a fun part, like relearning everything. And I think I would not have been necessarily as successful shall I taken the other way around and basically trying to chase senior roles straight away. And I think extrapolating from that very personal experience, being bold and not hesitating to actually, change tack. Like, okay, this is my title, so therefore the next step for me is going to be the next higher title. This doesn't have to be the case. There might be lateral initiatives that you can do to keep the fun, keep the learnings, and potentially have very interesting career prospects. So I think like that boldness element, I think for me, like really moving, changing countries, and then reestablishing myself at a really, really more junior level was actually a very foundational and important movement in my career. At the same time, I was learning the language, I was learning the culture, so it felt like the right thing to do for me. So there's definitely been elements where coming back as an engineer after having led massive teams and things like that was challenging to some aspect, but there was a lot of fun doing it. There was a lot of playfulness. So Yeah, it was. I wouldn't say that it wasn't there. It was definitely there, but that's not necessarily something that are, I'd say, is a massive impediment.
And how do you approach challenges and setbacks in your professional life?
Mm.
And what's your go-to strategy for overcoming them?
Yeah, right. So I think I've had that mindset probably since the beginning of my career, because I was quite independent and probably still am. So I did that anytime something would happen, I would make myself accountable for it. Even though there's things that you can't control in your life, of course, there's context. I was seeking for looking at aspect of that problematic where I could be accountable and therefore reclaiming the control over the situation. Spending less time into victim space and more into the leader space. What can I do to make the situation better? And that's really that accountability piece, which is just a mindset exercise. You push yourself into thinking at potential solutions. What can I do? And that is actually radically different because you move from contemplation to action. And when there's a setback or a challenge, this is a very important energy type of resource. You gain a lot of momentum from it. So I think that's probably like the grounding foundation of how I approach challenges. Then another aspect, I think probably more of a strategy to navigate it is in anything that happens, there's a context and there's how you react to the context. And I always think about, okay, again, like I think it's a natural corollary from what I said before, really spending more time into, I am in control of how I react to an event. And that's, I think the way you show up, the way you present yourself in face of that adversity is absolutely in your control. And that is something which I find very empowering. And that's something that I try to leverage and use as much as possible. It's all about, acknowledging that there are situations that you fundamentally don't control. They are like, workspace relationship, works dynamics, relationship with your boss. There's a lot of things that you can't necessarily influence. And that's okay. That's cool. It's all about what can I do about it.
Yep.
And that is actually, it's very easy to say and can be extremely complicated to implement in full. So I think this is a bit of a journey. It's also like an overarching framework to navigate hardship, either in professional life or in your personal life. Make yourself accountable. Try to control on your own emotions, on how you react to a given problem.